we've put billions of dollars trying to cure lung cancer, not prevent it.
If we just prevented it, we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Prevention's easier.
Prevention's very easy,
yeah.
Right? Something you said before we got on here and that I read in your book is that aging is a disease. Is that right?
Well, that's what I think, yeah.
That's what you think it is. Would that mean death is a disease as well?
Well, death is the end product of aging.
Okay.
Right? So we've cured just about every other major disease. So you don't die from an infection. You typically don't die in childbirth if you're a woman. So now what's left is aging. And while we're whacking each of these diseases, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, we're trying to whack them on the head like a whack-a-mole game.
Right.
We forget that the main reason all these diseases occur is that our bodies are aging. If you don't get old, you don't get those diseases.
Is that because your immune system is strong and so that it fights against disease essentially, or?
Well, yes, it's similar, but it's not the immune system that you're thinking of. We actually have inbuilt defenses. We call them longevity genes that we can activate in our daily lives by doing certain things.
Longevity genes?
Yes, that's what we call them.
How many genes do we have?
Oh, we've got about 24,000 of them.
23 or 24,000 genes.
Right, but there's only about 50 really important ones for longevity.
Okay, and what are one of this the longevity gene?
Well, the ones we study are called sirtuins, and there are 7 of those. And they're in all parts of the body, and they do all really crazy good stuff for us.
Okay, and where do telomeres come into play?
Well, they're part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 7 hallmarks, or 8 depending. These are causes of aging. So telomeres are one of those hallmarks. Other things are like the battery packs winding down, those mitochondria in our cells. We lose stem cells, all this other stuff. But here's the important point. We think, A, that there's a unified cause, a whole upstream cause of all of those things. We can talk about that. Yeah. But also these sirtuins, they defend against all of those. So while we used to think we'd have to develop 8 different drugs to slow down aging, if you just tap into these longevity genes, they take care of everything.
Really? Mm-hmm. They continue to regenerate good cells. They continue to fight against disease or stress or whatever it may be. Or
they do. They're really smart. They make proteins that act like traffic cops telling the body how to fend against adversity.
Okay.
And they've been with us on the planet since life first arose.
And it's 7 of them?
Well, the ones I studied, there are 7. There are others. There are 7 sirtuins, and there are 3 classes of longevity gene. The ones I study, those 7, and there's a couple of others that you can turn on.
Why don't you study the others? Are they not credible enough?
We do, but we scientists, we like to specialize.
Gotcha.
But in truth, even though 10 years ago we used to fight with each other, my longevity gene is more important than your longevity gene. It was ridiculous. My worm's living longer than your worm. It was really silly. But now we've realized, most of us admit that all these genes are talking to each other, and if you tweak one set, the others will be tweaked too.
Right, okay. So these genes, when you say you study them, what does that actually mean? You're pulling like blood out of different humans and you're putting them in a tube and you're researching and you're like, what's actually happening to study these?
Yeah.
Because I'm a non-scientist, I have no clue what that actually means.
Right.
Is it like rats? Is it humans? Is it,
You've got to come to the lab. You've got to see what's going on because it's crazy stuff. We do anything we can to answer a question.
You're cloning humans in there. You're doing all sorts of stuff, right?
It's crazy stuff.
Okay.
So we're driven by the question, not by the technology. So most labs will say, okay, I'm an expert in rats. I don't give a rat's about a rat. I care about answering a question. Yeah. And our question is, why do we age and what can we do about it? And will that transform medicine?
Wow.
And so what we do, if you came to the lab, you'd see we've got jellyfish growing. We've got mice that are living longer and running on little treadmills.
Wow.
Up in the lab, we have stem cells that we're growing and actually turning them back in time. We can reverse the aging of these human cells. Yeah.
So what does that mean? You take a cell from a human, like a sample, like a skin sample, like a blood.
Brain cells growing in the dish.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, brain cells growing in the dish?
Yeah.
So like you take it from like a living human?
Yes.
You take a little piece of brain?
Yes.
You put it in a dish, and then you reverse the age of the brain.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we do. Now we can actually grow little brains in the dish too.
From scratch?
Well, you start with a network of cells, and then you coax them into forming these networks, and it's like a mini brain, yeah.
Okay, so...
And we can age them forwards, make them older, because we think we understand what's driving the aging process.
Really?
And then we reset.
And then you reverse it.
Right.
So you can create a brain from nothing, a bunch of little cells that come together and create a thinking brain.
Well, I don't know how much it thinks, but it'll respond to stimuli. It'll fire, yeah.
And then you can make it older, like Benjamin Button, and then reverse its aging.
Right.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. But when I'm in the lab and with my students, for us, it's just every day. It's like going to work and doing stuff.
It's like, there's the brain. It's getting older. It's getting younger. Yeah.
Yeah. But now that I'm talking about it with you, it does sound bizarre.
For a non-scientist.
Yeah. The other thing that's weird about this profession, anyone who wants to go into it, is that essentially you're an apprentice under me, and you work in the lab and you spend a few years learning how to do all this stuff. It's not easy. The first 2 years, basically, you screw up.
Yeah.
But it's weird that, to think about it, you get a bench in a lab and some chemicals, and you have to make the chemicals yourself usually. And then your job is to discover something nobody else has discovered.
New, something new.
It's got to be not just slightly new, radically new. Because I'm at Harvard, they don't give prizes for discovering something obvious.
Wow.
It's got to be shocking. And if it's not shocking, it's not worth studying.
And haven't you discovered like tens or like 30-something, 35 awards for new discoveries or something, or 35 patents? What do you have? Something crazy.
It's some numbers like that.
You've discovered a lot of new things.
Well, yeah. If I didn't, I wouldn't have a job. So there's motivation to always be doing cutting edge stuff. But what drives us, and the reason I think we've been successful, is that we're driven by the question, not by the technology.
Yeah.
And the technology comes second. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, here's a question. We want to figure out, why does cold improve health? Or why does fasting, not eating, improve health? How do you figure that out? Well, then you got to pull together teams of people, molecular biologists, biochemists, mathematicians, computer software people, and we get in a room and we figure it out.
Really? So what would you say, your questions are, why do we age and how do we reverse it? Is that the two questions you're focused on the most right now?
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
Why do we age and how do we reverse aging?
Right.
Do you think, and so you say aging is a disease, is death a disease as well then in your mind? Is it like that just leads into, and can we reverse death? Is that a possibility?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So anyone who's had their head frozen, there's nothing I can do for you right now. But we can turn back the clock radically. Just in the last couple of years, we've figured out that there's a backup hard drive of youthfulness in the cell that we can access to reset it. So usually the earlier you start in turning on your longevity genes, the better. We've learned from studying mice and now humans for many years that if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you want to start.
Turn it on now.
Do it now. Because
don't wait till you're 80 and then say, how do I go be 60 again?
But most people do. They wait too long.
Why?
Well, because they're in denial that they're mortal. And we used to think that aging was a one-way street. You couldn't do anything about it. We now know from studying twins that 80% of your health in old age is up to you, how you live your life.
Right. Your community, your positivity, your thinking, your food, the sleep you have, like all those things, right?
Yeah, and the reason that they work, we've discovered, is because they turn on the longevity genes. That's the breakthrough.
Okay.
So now we're artificially tweaking these longevity genes genetically or with supplements or hopefully medicines soon.
Gotcha. But you could do it in more natural or organic ways is what I'm hearing.
Well, right now, that's what we've got. And even if you just do the 5 obvious things like skip meals and don't smoke and exercise, that'll get you an extra 14 years on average.
Really?
It's that big. That's not even using high tech.
That's just, there's no technology, just like living a good life.
Right.
So what are the main things to turning on the longevity that anyone can do without technology, without money, science?
Yeah. Well, okay. So we've first of all, don't smoke.
Yeah.
That'll damage your DNA. That'll accelerate the aging process.
Does that include like e-cigarettes and all these other vaping? Does that also include that?
I'm a big advocate for putting nothing artificial in your body, including vaping.
Yeah.
My mother died from lung cancer, so I'm pretty militant about it.
Wow.
I don't think vaping is as bad in terms of the number of chemicals getting into your body.
Yeah.
But we've seen recently it's probably not healthy anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so no smoking. That's one.
That's one. Next one is don't eat so much. Eat less often. So not malnutrition, of course. You don't want to get too thin. But this 3 meals a day plus snacks is ridiculous.
That's been
in the
my
future.
Life.
You look great.
I need to get rid of that.
Yeah, well, you're also working it out. But someone like me who's not an athlete, the most exercise I do during the day typically is typing. 3 meals a day is too much. Actually, 1 meal is enough for someone like me.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm now 50, so my metabolism is way
50,
down.
You look like you're 37.
Oh, thanks.
It's great,
You
man.
might need
I thought
glasses.
you're like 100 and you look at 37. You probably reversed the aging.
Well, I'm glad I don't look 80 because that would really be bad for,
for
my
your
message.
Okay, so we got no smoking, eating less.
Yeah. Next one would be the obvious, high intensity interval training. Lose your breath once in a while.
Lose your breath? What do you mean? Just by like working out, like, you know.
Yeah, become hypoxic. Tell your body that you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something like that. The reason all of this stuff works in terms of the diet and exercise, it's not that your blood flows more or that being hungry is just healthy for the body. It's actually that your longevity genes get turned on by these things. And why does that happen? Why does it happen in humans, in mice, even in yeast cells for bread and beer? The reason is that the body senses adversity and says, crap, we got to fight back. We might die next week without food, and we're running away from tigers and lions. That's what this survival network, this longevity gene.
So it turns it on when it feels like it's in survival mode.
That's it. We want to be in survival mode, and we spend our whole lives trying to reduce our adversity.
Right, being comfortable.
Right.
Being
Don't be
warm all the
hungry.
time.
Don't be puffed. Don't walk. Valet your car.
Right.
Roll your suitcase. Don't carry it, for goodness sakes. We've done the worst. No wonder we're getting sicker and sicker.
We're in a world of convenience.
Right, and it's the worst thing we could do for our bodies in terms of longevity. So those 3 things.
Okay.
The other 2, let's see, what else is there? Oh, the type of food you eat is important. There's a big debate, of course.
They say like plant-based is going to extend the telomeres, right? If you're eating leafy greens, that's what I've heard. But
right. Well, among other things, it's also going to have a couple of really important types of molecules. One are the monounsaturated fats, fatty acids. You get that from olive oil and avocados. Those are great. And we've just learned that that's a really important trigger for a certain longevity gene.
Olive oil.
Yeah.
I think when I had Gundry on, he was like, I drink a cup of olive oil a day or something, like teaspoons of olive oil. He's just eating it. Well, he's like, I'm trying to get as much in as I can, putting it on everything. So.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to that, because there's a new discovery as of a week ago that says we think we understand how that works. But in olive oil, there's also what are called, the other important component of a plant-based diet are polyphenols, which are the molecules that plants make when they're under adversity, when they're stressed. And I believe that we've evolved to sense when our food is running out. So we get that signal when our plants are stressed. So you don't want to eat plants that are like this white liquid lettuce you can buy, Californian lettuce.
Right.
You want these colored vegetables that have been a little bit stressed, a little bit dried out. Wine is a perfect example. It's full of polyphenols, one called resveratrol that we've worked on for 20 years. And it activates these longevity pathways really well.
Wow.
So stress your food, organic.
Yeah.
I am for a plant-based diet, but I do eat meat occasionally. It tastes pretty good. But it's very clear. Dan Buettner is right. Where you go to the longest lived places in the world.
The blue zones, right?
Sardinia, right? The Okinawa Island in Japan. They're not eating all meat. And actually, we know that if you eat a lot of meat, you shut down some of these longevity pathways.
Really?
Yeah. So you might look good and grow muscle. And that's great when you're young. You want to find a mate. You want to look good. You want to feel good. But in the long run, I don't think that's healthy. Really?
So cutting down less and less meat, at least. Having more plants is the way to go.
Yeah, that's what I've done. I was on an Okinawa diet in my 20s and 30s.
Which is what? Just rice and leaves?
It's a bitter rice. You got to watch out for white rice because it'll spike your sugar.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But it's a lot of tofu, miso soup, green leafy vegetables, dark greens for these phytochemicals. And then what else was it? There was a bit of fish.
Okay.
Yeah. But also what's important is not a lot of food. I mean, these days, I'm stopping eating when I'm about 60, 70% full. And I'm trying to
I just never feel
breakfast and lunch.
full until I'm like eating so much, and then I'm like, okay, I'm full.
Well, you're a young,
so
active, hungry man.
Well, here's one of the things. I think one, when you eat slower, you start to get fuller. You start to feel it. And I'm the youngest of 4. And so as a kid, we didn't have a lot of money growing up in a small town in Ohio, and there wasn't that much food. So I learned to like grab and just shove it in my mouth. And that became a habit that I've kind of stuck with. And I'm not starving anymore. Like the food's available at any time. I can afford it, and I have it all the time. But I think it's reconditioning my mind or a habit or a routine of like, you know, I'm not scarfing my face down right now, but you know, it's that mindset of, oh, what if I'm going to go hungry?
For sure. We all suffer from that. Well, not all of us, but those of us who grew up in regular families, we were told to finish our meals.
Right. Don't leave anything on the plate. There's hungry kids everywhere.
Brothers and sisters, right? They're stealing your food. My wife grew up in a very poor family, and even when she was a student, she could barely afford food. She would scrounge and buy potatoes. And at the dinner table, she'll kill me for this, but she will eat like it's going to all go away tomorrow. But I have to remind her and everyone should know this. There's always going to be another meal. Yeah. There will be another meal. Don't worry. But we're conditioned to eat food when it's in front of us.
I think it's a mental conditioning, and it's also like either your body's tricking you, or it's your brain, or it's your gut, or something is tricking you. Like, I'm still hungry, even though you had 2,000 calories in 10 minutes. You're still like, oh, there's food. It's like turning something on where you're like, I want to eat that. I don't know why that is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the reason that we're here. Our ancestors put on fat and they survived the famine. We don't have famines anymore, thank goodness. Yeah. But we've descended from those people. Right. So we've got the genes in our brain that say, eat, eat, eat.
How do you turn that gene off?
Well, you can take certain types of food. I drink a lot of tea and coffee, hot water even, just to fill up my stomach. That works really well.
Okay. Hot water, not cold water.
I just like the feeling of hot water. Cold water isn't as... it might be something about the heat. I've never thought about it, but for me, that's what works. So when I get a little bit hungry at lunchtime, I'm basically drinking tea.
Warm water tea, yeah, you put it like some... Oh, interesting. Okay.
But it's a fight all the time. Yeah. You know, I fly a lot, and people are bringing...
nuts and cookies and ice cream
and you got to fight it, and it's really hard to fight all the time.
How do you say no?
Well, I do.
You don't.
But how do I do that? So I've trained myself to fight it, and the best thing that I do besides saying, can I have a cup of tea, is what do I want to look like next week? What do I want to look like a year from now? What do I want to look like when I'm 80?
So you tell yourself that. You ask yourself the question. I think it's also, how do you want to feel tonight, tomorrow, next week when you're 80? It's like look like and feel. Combination is powerful.
Right, because your mind is saying now is important, and you got to train yourself to say tomorrow and the next year is just as important.
The rest of my life, yeah.
Right, and that's more important.
Okay, so was that the fourth thing or the fifth thing?
The fifth thing I didn't mention. There are a couple of things. Let's divide it up. One is get good night's sleep.
Sleep is everything.
Yeah, and then surround yourself by friends and people who'll take care of you.
Yeah. That's like the Blue Zone way too, right? It's like be around a good community, get lots of rest and naps, move a little bit, eat healthy, right? It's like,
well, these are things that most people should know, but they don't do. So you and I are here to motivate people to do that.
Exactly.
But the research that I discuss in the book is how to take that to a new level, how to optimize those things and add some science in there.
To reverse it.
Or getting there.
I like this. Okay, before you share that stuff, how did you get into this fascination or curiosity of reversing aging in the first place? Was there someone that inspired you? Was there a moment? Was there an event? Did something happen?
Yeah, it was an event that I think we've all gone through, we just forgot about. We learned that there's such thing as death. We don't live in a Disney movie.
Right. It's not all happily ever after.
It's not. It's shocking. When we're 4 or 5, we're told this, and we realize it, and we're in denial. You know, oh no, that's not going to happen. But for me, I haven't been able to get that out of my mind.
Really,
it's cruel, don't you think, that we're sentient beings that know that this is all going to end.
We love people. They take care of us, and then they're gone.
Yeah, and I don't want to live forever. I would just like to leave the world a better place.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things that we're missing in medicine is that aging is driving a lot of our sickness. And when we treat diseases, we're treating them far too late. Once you've got well, I won't say which disease, but take my mother for example. Let's use her lung cancer as an example. She could have not smoked. She could have done all the things we've talked about. She could have perhaps taken some molecules that we work on and not had lung cancer. By the time she had a tumor that was the size of a grapefruit in her lung, it's game over.
She couldn't do anything.
Right, but we've put billions of dollars trying to cure lung cancer, not prevent it.
If we just prevented it, we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Prevention's easier.
Prevention's very easy. Yeah. Right? So how old were you when your mom passed away from lung cancer?
I was 25.
Okay.
And no, let me take that back. She was diagnosed when she was 25.
When I was 25. When you were 25.
And she went on another 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, but it wasn't really an enjoyable life.
It was a...
They took out her left lung.
So was she breathing from a tube, or was it like...
She could breathe, but she wasn't. She was always short of breath. There were times when she thought she was just going to suffocate in front of us. Eventually she did, by the way. That was not pleasant. Oh my gosh. That's not something anybody wants. Yeah, and no one tells you what it's like to see your mother die or your parents die. It's horrific.
Wow.
I've never experienced another death, just this one, but it was not pleasant. And we don't talk about it. We deny it, oh, they're going to drift off into sleep. That's not what happened to my mom.
It's suffering. It's pain, it's agony, it's suffering, right?
Yeah, my mother was turned into a writhing lizard in front of me, and all I could do was whisper into her ear, "Thanks for being the best mum I could ever hope for."
Oh my gosh.
That was it. A couple of minutes later, she's turned blue and choking. And
no way. You can't do anything for her.
Right, that's it. You're helpless. You're helpless. It's just, anyone who smokes, please work to give it up. It's just not a good ending.
Wow. Were you with her alone? Were you with family? Was it friends? Was it?
Yeah, my father and my brother and I. I was also in denial because I flew from America to Australia to be with her.
And you're like, gosh, she's going to get through this.
Yeah, you tell yourself she's always recovered. Last 20 years, she'll pull through. And the doctor pulled us aside and said, "We've x-rayed her lung. There's barely any lung left that's working.
Oh my gosh.
You better say goodbye." And I said, "What are you talking about?"
Oh my gosh.
She's laughing in the bed. She's fine. And 10 minutes later, she starts choking and fluids building up in her lungs. And, if you've ever seen somebody have something stuck in their throat, that's what it was like.
Oh my God. You can't get it out.
Can't get it out.
You can't.
She's drowning.
Heimlich maneuver. You can't. CPR. You can't try to.
Well, I'm running around saying, "Help me, help me." And all the nurses are like, "It's nothing we can do."
Wow.
So that's traumatic. So please, let's try to prevent these diseases as long as possible.
How old was your mom when she passed?
So she was my age when she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and then she lived till 70.
Wow. But she could have, hypothetically, if she didn't get hit by a bus or something, she could have lived a much longer life if she didn't have the cancer.
Oh, absolutely. And through my teenage years, I would shout at her, "Stop smoking. You're going to die when you're in hospital. I'm not going to come visit you.
Oh my gosh.
You're only given one life." Because I'm pro-life. Everything about me is, we are so lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
1 in a trillion sperm from your parent, from your dad, and it's you. What's the chance?
Gift.
It is. Don't throw it away. And she was the opposite. She's like, drinking and smoking, and I've lived a good life. Don't bother me. And she paid the consequence.
If you want more greatness in your life, then you got to check out this video right here.
He had a great quote that said, "Rest at the end, not in the middle." And that's something I always live by. I'm not going to rest. I'm going to keep on pushing now. There are a lot of answers that I don't have, even questions that I don't have. But I'm just going to keep going.